Hey guys, I'm JC and today we're playing the Queen of Aristocrats, Teysa Karlov. This deck aims to take advantage of death triggers and then beats its opponents by either draining them for life or creating a token army to swing in with. If you want to build this deck yourself, then make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech as well as other gameplay videos showing how the deck was built as well as how it plays out. We also have a Discord with a channel dedicated specifically to Teysa if you'd like to discuss the deck more there. There'll be a link in the description below. Let's see just what the Queen of Orzhov can really do. Okay guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, we have Morophon the Boundless, and we have Ramos Dragon Engine. Now if we take a look at our opening hand, it's not too great. We only have 2 lands. We certainly have a Sacrifice Outlet which we're happy to see, but Living Death isn't going to be too great just yet. Morbid Opportunist on 3, so we really have to draw into our 3rd land to be able to use that. It feels just a little too risky, so I think I'm going to mulligan. Alright, the second hand looks much better. We've got 2 lands, we have Ramp, we have quite a few 1-drops, but importantly we have access to 2 different Sacrifice Outlets, and Life Insurance should do some work as we hit the mid-game, so we'll definitely keep this. We start the game off by drawing a land for turn. Let's play our fetch land. We'll crack it right away. We'll find that Godless Shrine. We'll have it come into play untapped, so we'll lose 2 life. And then we'll cast our Shambling Ghast. Then that'll be our turn done. Yuriko starts by playing a land for turn. Next, they cast a Memnite. And then they pass the turn. Morophon plays the land, but that'll be it for them. Ramos plays their land for turn, but when it ETBs, they get to scry 1. And that is it for their turn. We draw a Carrier Thrall for turn. Let's start by playing our Swamp. Then we'll cast our Felwar Stone. And then we'll finish up by casting our Carrion Feeder. We'll pass through combat, and then we'll pass the turn. Yuriko plays a land for turn. Now they move to combat. Memnite swings towards the Morophon player. The Yuriko player ninjutsus their commander in response. Yuriko deals 1 damage to the Morophon player. That triggers Yuriko. They reveal a miscast. And then they recast their Memnite once again. And that is going to be it for their turn. Morophon plays a land. But once again, they're just leaving it there and passing the turn. Ramos starts by playing a land. And they're also just going to leave the turn there. We draw another Trader for turn. So let's begin by playing our Plains. And now I think we'll get down our commander. Now we'll move to combat. We'll swing our Carrion Feeder towards the Ramos player. They take the damage. And then we're going to pass the turn. Yuriko plays a land. Now they move to combat. Yuriko swings towards the Morophon player. And Memnite as well. We're going to respond here by sacrificing our Shambling Ghast. Just so we can start to slow down the Yuriko player. Especially if Morophon and Ramos are playing a little bit of a slower game at the moment. Our first trigger will give the Memnite -1/-1. And then we'll make a treasure token. Memnite goes down, and then Carrion Feeder gets a +1/+1 counter. Now we move to resolve Yuriko's attack. Damage goes through, that triggers Yuriko. They get themselves a Phantasmal Image. In their second main phase, they cast a Sensei's Divine in top. Pay 1, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You can also tap to draw a card, then put Sensei's Divine in top on top of its owner's library. That will start to really help them fix what they draw off Yuriko. And that is going to be it for them. Morophon plays a land for turn, and it is an Urza's Tower. So 2 other Urza's lands, and it will start to tap for a lot of mana. But that is going to be it for them. Ramos plays a land for turn. Now they start by casting a Dark Ritual. It looks like we have a response from the Yuriko player, and they actually decide to cast their miscast. So that spell gets countered, and that's actually enough for our opponent to concede there. That's a little bit of a shame. Didn't seem like they were definitely out of the game, but I guess that's 1 opponent down now. And the way this game's shaping up, it definitely seems to be us versus the Yuriko player. Now we go to our turn, we draw a Blight Mound for turn. Well, that will give us something to do with our Nether Trader, which is really good to see because we currently don't have any card advantage in hand. So I think this turn, while we have the Yuriko player relatively tapped out, it might be a good idea to try to resolve our Life Insurance. They certainly could have something like a Swan Song, which would certainly make us pretty sad, but I think this is the moment we have to try. So let's go for it. Because if it does resolve, it's going to help us really fix our mana and basically make sure that even if we don't draw any more lands, we're not going to have mana problems. But it looks like the Yuriko player is passing priority on that, and thankfully it does resolve. Now let's move to combat. Carrion Feeder is going to go towards the Yuriko player. That knocks them down to 38, and then we're going to pass the turn. Yuriko starts their turn by just moving straight to combat. They swing towards the Morophon player. Damage goes through, that triggers Yuriko. Well, let's see what they find this time. They might also respond with their Sensei's Divining Top, but they don't. Instead, they get an Infernal Grasp. Now they decide to activate their Sensei's Divining Top, looking at the top 3. Now they tap their Sensei's Divining Top to draw a card. So it must be something they want to play this turn. And it looks like they want to play their land drop for turn, a Morphic Pool. But they are just going to pass the turn there, leaving their 3 mana up and notably their Infernal Grasp in hand. So probably fairly likely that we see our Teysa go when it gets to the end of the Morophon player's turn. Which they're going to need to do, because if Teysa hangs around and we start getting some of these creatures down to sacrifice, it's not going to matter if Teysa goes down, we'll be able to pay the cost to get it back out turn and turn again. And notably, when the Yuriko player did go to their discard, they did discard a Consign Oblivion, which they can cast from their graveyard. So just something to keep in mind. And the Morophon player starts their turn by playing a land for turn, and Urza's Mine. So just one more Urza's land and they're going to be able to tap for a lot of mana. But it seems once again they're not casting any spells and they're just moving straight to their end step. Let's see if Yuriko gets rid of our Teysa. No, they decide to let us untap with it. Okay, and we draw a Necropotence. Very, very good draw there. So we really don't want to play the Necro out and have our opponent counter it, because it might be the make or break for us this game to try to get a leg up on our opponent and how many cards they're drawing. So we may have to try to bait out any interaction. Let's start by casting our Carrier Thrall for turn. That triggers our Extort, but we won't pay. Alright, well Yuriko's letting that resolve. That's good news for us. Now let's cast our Nether Trader. That triggers Extort once again, which we won't pay for. And that resolves. Okay, well let's move to combat. Let's swing everything we can at the Yuriko player. Alright, Yuriko has a response now. And they cast their Infernal Grasp targeting our commander. So in response to this, we're going to sacrifice our Nether Trader. That triggers our life insurance twice thanks to Teysa. So we'll lose a life and make a treasure token each time that does trigger. Next, we'll sacrifice our Carrier Thrall. We'll make another 2 treasures. We'll use Nether Trader's ability to bring it back from the graveyard. So that comes back in play. We'll make 2 1/1 Colorless Eldrazi Scions. We'll sacrifice Nether Trader once again. And then we'll finally let the Infernal Grasp resolve. Which, thanks to Teysa, is going to give us another 2 treasure tokens. We'll bring Nether Trader back from the graveyard. And now we can resolve the rest of our attack phase. And Carrion Feeder is notably a 5/5 now. So getting in a good amount of damage. Now, it looks like the Yuriko player actually does have a response before we go to damage. And they cast a Chain of Vapor targeting our Carrion Feeder. Okay, interesting. I probably would have held on to that myself. We don't mind too much that we're not getting the damage through. It says, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If the player does, they may copy this spell and they may choose a new target for the copy. So we'll let that bounce back to our hand, but we won't sacrifice the land, because we don't want our opponent bouncing our life insurance back to hand. So that ultimately fizzles our combat step. But I think we profited pretty well from it. So now with our opponent tapped out, provided they don't have something like a Fierce Guardianship or a Force of Will, or any of the similar free spells, I think now's the time to go for our Necropotence and hopefully refill our hand. So let's see if this resolves. That triggers our Extort. We won't pay. It thankfully does go through. Alright, well I think we can race the Yuriko player now. So let's finish up by resolving our Blightmount. And then we will cast our Carrion Feeder, because we can't forget that our opponent can actually make us discard thanks to that Oblivion in the graveyard. We don't want to lose a sack outlet here. Pretty key to our strategy. Extort does trigger, but we won't pay. And now let's start activating our Necropotence, and I think we'll pay 8 life into it to get 8 cards to go into our hand. Now we'll move to our end step. We'll put all those cards into our hand. Looks like I might have clicked 1 extra time, so let's say 9 cards instead of 8. Dictate of Erebos. Okay, we love to see that. That can pretty much shut the Yuriko player out of the game if we resolve it. A land, another land, yet another land, an Erebos. Probably a little risky to play out at the moment. A land, another land. Okay, we're clearing quite a few lands off the top of our deck. A Plumb the Forbidden, and another sack outlet. Okay, well, let's discard some of the lands here. And I'll actually get rid of our fetch lands. While life is an important resource for us, they will get exiled. And now we'll pass it over to the Yuriko player. They just start by moving straight to combat. Once again, they send Yuriko towards the Morophon player. Damage goes through, that triggers Yuriko. Let's hope we don't see a high mana value card. And they just get themselves a Swan Song. So good news on the mana value, not so much on the card, unless of course they do tap out. Next, they do cast a Limdol's Vault. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. As many times as you choose, you may pay 1 life, put those cards on the bottom of your library in any order. Then look at the top 5 cards of your library. Then shuffle and put the last cards you looked at this way on top in any order. They go down to 33. And they're just going to pass, leaving 2 mana up. Morophon starts their turn by playing a land. Let's hope we get to see them do something this turn. But it looks like, unfortunately, they're just passing the turn once again. I'm not too sure if their deck has some sort of gimmick that they're trying to go for that we might not be aware of, but they're going to need to do it soon, otherwise this game's going to be over. And we do skip our draw for turn, so we'll start by playing our Swamp. Next, we'll try to resolve our Commander. That triggers Extort, but we won't pay. And thankfully, Teysa does resolve. So now we'll sacrifice our Nether Trader to Carrion Feeder. That triggers Life Insurance twice as well as Blight Mound. Now, I don't know if our opponent's actually seen the loop we can get into here, but we're not going to say anything just yet or hopefully indicate to them. But each life that we're actually losing from our life insurance, we're going to be able to get back by sacrificing these pests, because they do say when they die, you gain 1 life, which will actually be 2 thanks to Teysa. Now we'll sacrifice a pest token. We're going to return our Nether Trader from the graveyard. We'll gain 2 life. And all the while, Carrion Feeder is going to be growing larger and larger. So let's do the same thing again, sack our Nether Trader. We'll make more treasures, and by sacking our pests, we'll make more life. So I just messaged my opponents and let them know the loop that we could get into here, where we can continually make the pests, make the treasure tokens, and with the card draw spell we have in hand, it's going to be very hard to interact with, unless of course they have something like a Flusterstorm. But as soon as I did put that message in, it seems that the Yuriko player has disappeared, so we'll wait a little bit longer, but this might be the end of the game here. Alright guys, well the Yuriko player did come back and they did let us resolve a few triggers, but now they've moved away from keyboard once again, so I think I'm going to call the game here. Let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So to start with, it was a real shame that the Ramos player scooped so early, but when I went back and checked chat later, they said they had scooped because they felt they couldn't compete against the Yuriko player's deck. As for the Morophon player, I still have no idea what they were trying to do, because by turn 5 they should have been able to cast something from their hand. Whatever their plan was, they didn't get to execute it in the end. The Yuriko player, however, got off to a good start, as Yuriko decks often do. They were also running a lot of interaction, particularly on the stack, so we had to be careful in the timing of when and what spells we cast to make sure that key cards resolved. I think the nail in the coffin for the Yuriko player was not removing our Teysa when they had the chance on turn 4. Because by the time they did, our value engine was already online and we were able to assemble a combo which was enough to end the game. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed watching Teysa or any of the other regular commanders that appear on the channel and want to see more games with those commanders, make sure to check out our playlists on the channel that organise all of those videos in one easy to find place. Until next time guys.